Yasodanandana Braja Janananjana Yasodanandana Braja Janananjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivarajakacharya Astotara Sutta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Savai Charanara Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivarajakacharya Astotara Sutta Sri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Dari Ki Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Shri Giriraj Govardhana Ki New Govardhan Dharm Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, Madhya Lila, Chapter 1, Text 195 and 196. Tomara namalana, tomara kaila nindana. Se nama haila tara muktira karana. Tomara namalana, tomara kaila nindana. Se nama haila tara muktira karana. Vaishnavas? Tomara kaila nindana. Se nama haila tara muktira. Tomara, your, nama, holy name, lana, taking, tomara, of you, kaila, did, nindana, blaspheming, say, that, nama, holy name, haila, became, tara, of them, muktira, of deliverance, karana, the cause. Translations and purports by Srila Prabhupada. Jagai and Madai uttered your holy name by way of blaspheming you. Fortunately, that holy name became the cause of their deliverance. Text number 196. We too are millions and millions of times inferior to Jagai and Madai. We are more degraded, fallen, and sinful than they. Please repeat. Jagai and Madai uttered your holy name by way of blaspheming you. Fortunately, that holy name became the cause of their deliverance. We too are millions and millions of times inferior to Jagai and Madai. We are more degraded, fallen, and sinful than they. Purport. Excuse me, no. Hare Krishna. Oh, there's a... Text number 97, 197. Actually, we belong to the caste of meat-eaters because we are servants of meat-eaters. Indeed, our activities are exactly like those of meat-eaters. Because we always associate with such people, we are inimical towards the cows and brahmanas. Purport. There are two kinds of meat-eaters. One who is born in a family of meat-eaters and one who has learned to associate with meat-eaters. From Srila Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis, formerly W. Kas and Sakara Malik, we can learn how one attains the character of a meat-eater simply by associating with meat-eaters. At the present moment in India, the presidential offices are occupied by many so-called brahmanas, but the state maintains slaughterhouses for killing cows and makes propaganda against Vedic civilization. The first principle of Vedic civilization is the avoidance of meat eating and intoxication. Presently in India, intoxication and meat eating are encouraged, and the so-called learned brahmanas presiding over the state of affairs have certainly become degraded according to the standard given herein by Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. These so-called brahmanas give sanction to slaughterhouses for the sake of a fat salary, and they do not protest these abominable activities. By depreciating the principles of Vedic civilization and supporting cow killing, they are immediately degraded to the platform of Mlechas and Yavanas. A Mlecha is a meat-eater, and a Yavana is one who has deviated from Vedic culture. Unfortunately, such Mlechas and Yavanas are in executive power. How then can there be peace and prosperity in the state? The king or the president must be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Maharaj Yudhisthira accepted the rule of Bharatvarsha, formerly this entire planet, including all the seas and land, he took sanction from authorities like Bhishmadev and Lord Krishna. He thus ruled the entire world according to religious principles. At the present moment, however, heads of state do not care for religious principles. If irreligious people vote on an issue, even though it be against the principles of the Shastras, the bills will be passed. The president and heads of state become sinful by agreeing to such abominable activities. Sanatan and Rupa Goswamis pleaded guilty to such activities. They therefore classified themselves among the Mlechas, although born in a Brahmana family. Om Jnana Timanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksha Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual masters very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate grim yat kripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinatarnam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, the Saviour of all fallen souls. By his grace, even a lame man can cross over mountains, a blind man can see stars in the sky, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. Vande Sri Krishna Caitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaudadaya Pushpabanto Chitro Sandhu Tamo Nudo. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Krishna Caitanya and Prabhu Nityananda. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gaudadesh to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. So thank you everyone for coming out this morning for class. We'll do our best. We've got notes today, so it's looking more positive already. So Srila Prabhupada did instruct that his books be edited for clarity and force, 2 words he used. And as we've just heard, He spoke because he spoke and wrote with great clarity and force, as we've just heard. Fearless. He did not like the words perhaps and maybe, though he did use them on occasion, but sarcastically. And sarcasm is a form of humour. So when Prabhupada would point out the flaws, the defects, and use logic to great effect, especially in the direction of atheistic scientists, promising at some point in future, perhaps, maybe, they would create life from chemicals. And Prabhupada would always push back, as they say nowadays, against that. Well, we'll give you the chemicals, you make the life now in test tubes in your laboratories. And of course, we are working on that. And similarly against, Prabhupada had little patience for philosophical speculation, which wasn't based on Shastric evidence, which is considered the best proof or evidence, pramana. And that is what's known as Shastra pramana or Shruti pramana. That perhaps there is a supreme being, maybe like that. So there are just a couple of examples of Prabhupada's using those words. So we're seeing here the profound humility of Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. This is quite an exciting part of the Caitanya Caritamrita. While preparing this, I went through and read the entire chapter. Again, there's a lot going on here. But first of all, Dainya, absolute humility. Srila Sanatana Goswami has stated in his commentary on the Brihata Bhagavat Amrita, is the requirement first and foremost that one must have an aspiring devotee to enter into Krishna's abode, Goloka. Absolute humility. So they are showing that, demonstrating that here by approaching Mahaprabhu with this mood of absolute humility and describing themselves as lower than Jagai and Madai, offering full dandavats with straw between their teeth, even though they had much to be proud of, being the highest ranking ministers in the government of Nawab Hussain Shah. And we'll read coming up, though it's a little way off, so we can be forgiven for jumping ahead. There are occasions where Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis actually instructed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu took their advice. Just as we have other examples of Uddhava advising Lord Sri Krishna 5,000 years ago, and Krishna taking his advice very seriously. For example, when Uddhava instructed Krishna, the best way to get rid of this Jarasandha is if you and Bhimsen and Arjuna go to the palace of Jarasandha dressed as Brahmins and beg charity from him. So that's one example. One may argue, why does the Supreme Personality of Godhead need advisors? Well, why does it? It's for pastimes, to enjoy pastimes with his devotees in a vast variety of ways. And of course, Uddhava was very dear to Krishna. He's like a cousin, actually. I have read, I'm pretty sure, that he was actually one of the sons of Hare Krishna. It will come. Vasudev's brothers. I have read that. So in that way, it's actually family, cousin. Just as Arjuna and the Pandavas were also cousins of Krishna. So Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswamis took it upon themselves to advise Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at this particular junction in time that it wasn't a good idea for the Lord to go to Vrindavan with so many people following him. They said Vrindavan is a very solitary place. When the word spread that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was leaving Jagannath Puri to go on pilgrimage to Vrindavan, of course, many of the Lord's devotees and followers wanted to go with him and did. They dropped whatever they were doing, packed up a few travelling possessions, and off they went. And every village as they passed heading northwards, Mahaprabhu would perform his wondrous Sankirtan pastimes in the evenings with his devotees, which would charm all the local people wherever he stayed. So hundreds and hundreds of more people decided, well, we're going to Vrindavan with Lord Chaitanya. See you later. So by the time the Lord reached Ramakeli, there were thousands of people. And Rupa and Sanatan, they were concerned for Mahaprabhu's well-being because the Lord had to travel through some very dangerous parts of India at that time. And they were most concerned for Nawab Hussain Shah's position that he could turn. So it's full of political intrigue and adventure. I am adventure, Krishna tells Arjuna. So there's lots of adventures which we won't completely spoil going further along. But Mahaprabhu did take the advice of Rupa and Sanatan seriously, and he, after spending a little more time in that part of Bengal, he did actually turn back all the way to Puri. And Ramakeli is, I had a look on the map, is actually quite close to the border with present-day Bangladesh. It's only 15 kilometres from the sixth largest city in West Bengal, which is called Malda. So Mahaprabhu took the advice of the two brothers and he turned back. And he only stayed in Puri for a few days, and then he secretly left with just Balabhadra Bhattacharya. And I have read there was one other travelling Brahmana assistant as well that may be mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So, of course, these two brothers are very famous, and they had another brother, Vallabha. Sadly, he passed away at a young age. He was the father of Jiva Goswami. But their names, previously, their Vedic names were Amara and Santosh. You can remember them? S. Santosh Sanatan, and Amara Rupa Goswami. Amara means deathless or immortal, and Santosh means contentment. And the name Santosh is found in Patanjali Rishi's Yoga Sutras. In the very beginning stages of any yoga practice, there must be yama and niyama, or following rules and regulations, do's and don'ts. So unless a yogi of whatever discipline is content, not thinking in terms of past and future. Forget the past that sleeps, and ne'er the future dream at all, but live in times that are with thee, and progress ye shall call. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's poetry, very beautiful. So contentment, Santosha, Sanatana Goswami. And of course, historians generally accept that they were coerced against their will to a large extent to take up the positions of secretary and financial minister in the government of the Muslim king of that part of India at the time, which is a very big kingdom stretching into Orissa, Bengal, and into Assam. Nawab Hussain Shah. So he told them he heard how they were the most qualified young men, and in age they were very similar in age to Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Caitanya Mahaprabhu was born in 1486, Sanatan in 1488, and Rupa Goswami in 1489. So very close in age to Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So they were coerced because the Shah said, well, look, I want you to come and work for me in my government. He had heard of their vast learning, how popular they were, how honourable and dharmic they were, had so many good qualities. So he said, you come and work for me. I'll give you big positions, the biggest positions in my government, and I'll reward you handsomely. And if you don't, then I'll persecute not only your families, but the broader Hindu society. And he meant it. So reluctantly they took up those posts, and they were immediately ostracized from Brahminical culture because they had accepted service in the Islamic regime. But not everyone rejected them. Not all Brahmins rejected them, because we read further on, after meeting Caitanya Mahaprabhu and becoming convinced and overwhelmed with a desire to help the Lord in his mission, they resigned from their posts. And Rupa Goswami did manage to escape and headed north, but Sanatan Goswami was imprisoned by the Shah for a period of 17 months. And eventually he managed, again, more adventure and drama, to bribe the jailman with some money that Rupa Goswami had left behind with a grocer for safekeeping. And he managed to escape, and using wonderful, even gave the jailkeeper an alibi that he had been taken to the bank of the Ganges to answer calls of nature, and whilst there he jumped into the Ganga with his heavy iron shackles. He drowned and was washed away. That was the alibi that Sanatan told the jailkeeper. You tell that to the Shah, and then you won't get into trouble. You won't be potentially killed. And I'll go to Mecca and I'll become a holy man. Yes. So this was the strategy. So anyway, for some time, Sanatan Goswami, while the Shah was away fighting battles in Orissa to expand his kingdom, Sanatan just stayed in his palatial building, and he had many of these Brahmins come to him every day, and they studied together the Srimad Bhagavatam. So not everyone rejected them. And Mahaprabhu revealed that he had come all that way just to meet these 2 or 3 brothers. And they are described as direct disciples of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, because Mahaprabhu actually changed all their names, which is one of the 5 most important changes a devotee undergoes at the time of initiation. We get a name change, which helps us identify no longer with our material bodies, but going forward we are either Krishna Das or Radha Dasi, etc. So those names were all changed at the time of Mahaprabhu's direct initiation of the 3 brothers, Rupa, Sanatan and Anupam, also known as Vallabha. So, let's just Let's not miss anything important here, everyone. Hare Krishna. So back to the purport, and Prabhupada does make many strong statements here. Fearless, Abhay Charan Day was Prabhupada's family name, slightly modified at the time of Prabhupada's initiation to Abhay Charan Aravinda, one who was fearless, having taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. So, and Prabhupada would always, when he'd speak to huge crowds of people in his native India, he would not hold back either. He would speak very strongly to them in many, and use, of course, his dancing white elephants, his dozens and dozens of young Western disciples from many affluent countries to say, you are so anxious to give up your own culture to embrace this Western civilization. But here we have young American, Canadian, European, Australian people, devotees, and they're embracing your culture. So don't be embarrassed about, and don't give up your own culture. It's the most sublime, wonderful culture. So, and he would use the example, everybody wants Ram, Raj, or the kingdom of God without God. Because politicians at that time, and I'm sure today, would often promise, yes, you vote me into power and everything will be wonderful, we'll have the kingdom of Lord Ramachandra. But of course that is not to be. And wonderfully, next Saturday, we have the 59th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada incorporating his first branch of the International Society in New York City. So that's when we hope His Holiness Mukunda Goswami will be fit and able to come, and I'm sure he'll be looking forward to, because he was there, and I actually was doing research for this class and stumbled in, as you do when you're doing research, into a wonderful website which actually had many of the important documents, including, which I'd never seen before, the document of the incorporation of ISKCON in New York City in 1966. And veritable living ISKCON treasure, Mukunda Maharaj's name is there, of course, is Michael Grant, one of the signatories, witnesses, and one Mr. Goldsmith, who was the lawyer who was handling the incorporation as a registered legal entity. And it's very interesting. Over the years we've heard, and Prabhupada made it quite clear, why he called his society the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And he gave different reasons. Firstly, that when Mr. Goldsmith suggested, well-meaning, that he call his society the International Society for God Consciousness, Prabhupada rejected that idea. He said, no, that word is too vague, too nebulous. Whereas Krishna is very definitive. And Krishna, at that point at least, was not very well known outside of India, Lord Sri Krishna. Raso Vai Saha Krishna. Sad Aishvaya Puna Krishna. The reservoir, unlimited reservoir of all six opulences and the very embodiment of rasa. That Krishna, not very well known outside of India. So Prabhupada wanted to make Krishna famous, spread the glories of the Supreme Lord far and wide. Also, he did say on another occasion that if it was just called the International Society for God Consciousness, that would attract all the false gods. This is a society for me. Yes, I'll go and join. Finally, they've recognized my divinity. Where do I sign up? So, and even quite often the captains and best players in sporting teams, international sporting codes around the world, they're adored by their followers as God. And even one famous guitarist, English guitarist, in his hometown, so-and-so is God. Some of us from that era may know who we're talking about. So we're looking forward to that occasion next Saturday. So Prabhupada when Prabhupada was getting his education in Calcutta, his English education, born in 1896, so just starting at the very start of last century, different type of English was spoken in those days. Language does change over the decades and the centuries. So Prabhupada became very, very much accustomed to using old English words such as stumbling block, snare, and pitfalls to describe the challenges on the path of any aspiring transcendentalist, including aspiring devotees. Stumbling blocks, snares, and pitfalls. And of course, another famous word, which I don't think I've ever heard used outside of our ISKCON vocabulary, is unalloyed. And there's unalloyed, yes. You have alloys and then you have unalloyed. And there's a charming story, we'll tell it now, that when Prabhupada returned to Boston, and it was only a year or two after he'd started his society, and there was a very small center in Boston, and the early devotees had heard Prabhupada talk repeatedly about wanting to have a world Sankirtan party. So two of his earliest disciples, Brahmananda and Gargamuni Prabhu, they decided, Prabhupada's talking, wanting to have that, we should organize a world. So they bought an old Greyhound bus. And Gargamuni, who was very handy, and there were other early devotees who had different trades, they ripped all the seats out of the old Greyhound bus. They put a cork tile floor in. But that's as far as they got before Prabhupada came to Boston. That's where the bus was. And Prabhupada was very excited. He wanted to go for a ride on the bus, even though there were no seats anymore in the bus. So Brahmananda went and got a chair from the temple, and he put it in the front next, and Gargamuni drove the bus. Prabhupada sat in the chair, Brahmananda sat behind the chair and held it, so Prabhupada wouldn't slide around on the new, freshly painted cork tiles. And off they went, and Prabhupada knew exactly where he wanted to go. He said, turn left here, turn right there. And eventually they ended up down at the docks in Boston. And Prabhupada said, let's go for a walk. So off they went, and they ended up in front of a large warehouse right on the dock in Boston. And with his cane, Prabhupada pointed up, Boston, unalloyed steel. And Prabhupada said, that's what we want. Unalloyed devotion. Anya bilasita sunyam jnana kama janavitam anukulyana Krishna nu shilanam bhakti utama. Yes, utama bhakti. No devotion that's tinged with desires for fruitive activities, karma kanda or jnana kanda, liberation. So, we're going to segue now, everyone, to sloka of the morning on top of these ones, because this is mentioning Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. So I thought we'd include another wonderful verse, because that was one of Rupa Goswami's famous verses, often quoted. Now we have another one, another famous verse. So we'll read the Sanskrit. It goes something like this. Kleshagni subhada moksha laghuta krit sudulabha sandrananda vishesh atma Sri Krishna Kashani Chasa. The unique characteristics of bhakti are its ability to destroy suffering, its bestowal of auspiciousness, its disregard for liberation, its rarity of attainment, its manifestation of concentrated bliss, and its ability to attract Krishna. Now these 6 characteristics of, we have to emphasize, pure devotion, pure bhakti, is found right at the beginning of Nectar of Devotion. Very important verse. And it's interesting that Nectar of Devotion was one of the first books Srila Prabhupada published when arriving in America. And I heard only recently that Prabhupada was instructed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati at the time of his initiation in 1933 to study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So we can join the dots, so to speak, and Prabhupada never forgot that instruction, and he managed to get that, what he called a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion. He joked that summary study means you can write whatever you like. But of course Prabhupada didn't. Prabhupada was very faithful to the original, but Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is a very long work, and Prabhupada gave a summary study. He also, very innovative, wrote summary studies to the whole Caitanya Caritamrita in the form of teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And he also wrote a summary study of the entire 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which he titled The Krishna Book. So this is a very important verse, and the first two of each of the 6 characteristics align with 2 characteristics devotees can experience in their own lives as they pass from Kanishta Adhikari to Madhyama Adhikari to Uttama Adhikari. And the first 2, Kleshagni and Subhada, means almost a complete destruction of all inauspiciousness. And one's life becomes very auspicious as a result. So that, for those of us who are Kanishta Adhikaris, we experience that. It's tangible, it's real. I only speak for myself. My life was a bit of a mess, pretty chaotic, stumbling around in the darkness of ignorance. But then when we made the bold decision to join up, as we used to say, all of a sudden, within a very short time, our lives became very auspicious. And a lot of that inauspiciousness was removed. And our acharyas like Srila Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami and also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they give a wonderful example. We often hear of the Bhakti Lata Bija. Bija means seed. And anyone who's ever planted seeds, you wait excitedly for a couple of days, and if the seeds are viable, not fried, then a seedling comes up. And quite often it has a leaf directly opposite the stem as it comes up. So they are described as Kleshagni and Subhada by our acharyas. This word klesha is very interesting. Klesha dikataras tesham avyakta shakta chetasam avyakta hi gatiya dukam devhara be avapyute. For those whose minds are attached to the impersonal, unmanifest form of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied, Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita. So, but one has to be patient in bhakti, and one has to follow the process of daily watering the seedling, the watering process, hearing and chanting. But in time, just as anyone who has grown a fruit tree or a nut tree, I think our macadamia nut trees here and on our new property, isn't it, they take 7 years before they bear nuts. I think I've heard that with macadamias. And then other fruit trees also take at least a year or two, sometimes longer. So one has to be patient. The other characteristics, just to refresh, that are described here, such as disregard for liberation and rarity of attainment, they come for the Madhyamadhikaras. And the manifestation of concentrated bliss and its ability to attract Krishna, they come in time for the Uttama Adhikaris. But the others are not, and the other earlier characteristics, they're always, of course, included in the higher attainments. So perhaps everyone, that might be enough for this morning. Any questions, comments, or corrections? Do we have a microphone? I can, just in case. Does somebody want to? We can try an answer. Otherwise, we have our devotee friends, as they used to say. Someone said once, we get along with a little help from our friends. Chamri, isn't it?
Thanks for your class. Just talking about different words that Prabhupada uses that perhaps aren't so common. The word pandemonium isn't such an uncommon word, but in one purport, Prabhupada mentions that this material world is simply pandemonium. And I thought it was a strange word to use because usually it's sort of used in a light-hearted sense. So what does he mean? So I looked up in the dictionary, and pandemonium comes from the word pandemoniac, meaning place of the demons. So Prabhupada is saying this material world is the place of the demons. I thought, yes, that's the right word.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, very, very accurate description. Place of the demons, yeah. And of course, brings to mind Prabhupada's play on words. Prabhupada did not like democracy, and he referred to it as demon crazy. So, and neither did, interestingly, thousands of years ago, the great philosophers, Plato and Socrates, also didn't like democracy. And they were living in a pure democracy. Athens at the time, everyone was allowed to vote, at least men who held some property. I think franchised was the word. They could vote on all the affairs of state, to go to war or not go to war. And they actually voted to kill Socrates in the... it's not called Congress, but it had a name. The Forum, yeah. So no, thank you for that. Anyone else comment? Yes. I have to mention something. I've got you as a reference here, Lucas. Yeah.
I was gonna ask about the 5 change you get at initiation. You said the name change, but I was wondering what the other ones were.
I'll try and remember some of them. One is definitely the application of vertical tilak, udva pundra. That is there for us. These were, if you like, revived by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. They're actually mentioned in ancient Puranas, and you can find them pretty easily. I wonder if I've got them. I think I actually have them here written down. And they're... For example, let me just see if you can bear with me a moment, or I might have to come back because I've got a lot of information in this book and it just may not jump out at me. But I'll find it for you, and I will. We can have a look afterwards. Let me just see if I can remember a couple of others. So the name changed, vertical tilak. Oh, this is an interesting one, which we don't do in our Gaudiya Sampradaya. Wait till you hear this, devotees, if you don't already know. There was branding. Yeah. With a hot iron. and it was the symbols of Vishnu on the shoulder, one there and one there, and it was, I think, chakra and conch. And we have one devotee friend in New Zealand, Charan. It's his last. No, sorry, Jayatirtha Charan. Yes, you know him, Prabhu. Yeah, wonderful devotee. He is a wonderful follower. He's a wonderful pujari and brahmana. What's his first name again? Jayatirtha Charan, yes. And he has a special love for Madhya. And I heard him give a class once back in New Zealand. He went on for an hour and a half of the glories of Madhya. Anyway, he has been branded, and you can see them quite clearly there on his shoulder, one there and there. So that's a third one. And there's two others, which I might have to get, but oh yeah, Tulsi, yeah, the wearing of Tulsi neck beads, very important. Anyone can think of the final one? Yep, Sika could be in there as well. And of course, we exchange vows, which are very important, and we receive beads, and we vow to follow regulative principles and chana minimum. So there's a lot of, and they're found in the Hari Bhakti Vilas combined work of Sanatana Goswami and Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And it's interesting to note that it was Sanatana Goswami who introduced bead bags to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Prior to that, we quite often see great devotees and ancient sages chanting on either a small japamala in one hand or a japamala around. So Sanatana Goswami gave the instruction that devotees should keep their sacred beads in a bag. So that came from him. Manibandha Gopal, another comment, please.
Just on bead bags, I did read some time ago, I can't remember exactly where it was, that it just showed how confident Prabhupada was when he came to the West, that he brought with him, made from cardboard, the pattern of how to make a bead bag.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, confident. Yeah. I didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, ladies, anything else? Okay, I was just going to say it's, let me just see here. Okay. Vaishnavi, sure.
Thank you for the class, Prabhu. You're mentioning about the bead bag. I was just curious because I heard that we should keep our beads and our mantras hidden and sacred. So how did that work before the bead bag was introduced?
Not sure before, but I've also heard that, and I heard that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur would not show his beads to anyone, and he also stated that you should not, this is an interesting one, devotees should, yes, keep their beads hidden. And he also mentioned that you should keep it private who your guru is. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that, apparently. So I'm not sure prior to that. But just in regard, very last comment, everyone, regarding being patient on the path of bhakti, starting with the Kleshagni and Subhada, which lines up with that, was Govinda Dasi being initiated by Srila Prabhupada in San Francisco in 1967 at the famous Frederick Street Temple. And after she got initiated, she went to Prabhupada in the afternoon and said, Swamiji, I'm not feeling any different. And Prabhupada, it was August in San Francisco and hot, and there was a fan in the room. And Prabhupada pointed to the fan and he said, no, it's just like that fan. If I go and pull the plug out, it will take some time to slow down. But eventually it will stop. So, and we have that in the form of karmas, which we may not, our lives may not become full of auspiciousness, and there may still be some inauspiciousness, but we should be patient, and eventually everything will be all right. Thank you, Vaishnava. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Caitanya Charitamrita ki jai.